How is the industry looking at this reopening of Shanghai Disneyland? Does it seem too soon, too late? Are the precautions seen as adequate here?
Well, obviously with Disney, people look to that organization in just about every context in our industry. And I think there's a lot of excitement in the industry about this milestone today. And certainly, as you indicated, with the response of the early ticket sales for the reopening, that enthusiasm extends to the broader community. As to whether the industry is looking at it as too soon or too late, I think every park is going to have its own calculus there. But I think there's a lot of confidence that the folks at Disney are taking this extremely seriously. They've got a lot at stake here, anxious to reopen, but with high expectations among their guests. The scale and complexity of that operation, and of course the brand, one of the most trusted, most valuable brands in the world. There are cautions to be expected, and I think the fact that they're now reopening is a real source of inspiration and excitement for a lot of people.
And Ron, what aspects of this reopening are industry watchers going to be looking at most closely in terms of lessons that they might learn and apply to their own business?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned some of the operational changes that Disney's put in place. And in fact, Andrew Bolstein, the head of the operation over there, and Joe Schott, they actually posted a nice video of a walkthrough they did with local media. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking to some of those operational changes. I think you're going to see those in terms of social distancing, the limits on capacity and spacing in the queues and rides and restaurants. I think you're also going to see changes as it relates to guest compliance or guest entry. Here in Shanghai, everybody's going to be required to have their temperature checked at entry. They're going to have their little status code as a part of the city's mobile app, contact tracing app, is going to be checked. They're going to need to wear face masks in the park. And then you're also going to see a lot of hygiene-related changes in procedure within the park. So I think a lot of folks are going to be looking to those. But the reality is here in Shanghai, there have been several major attractions that have opened over the last 4 to 6 weeks, and some of those procedures are in place there. And so we're already starting to get some good lessons that are going to be adopted, I think, as other parks around the world begin to reopen as well.
Ron, but I mean, how you talk about all these extra measures for hygiene, etc. Probably also more measures taking place to have some form of social distancing in these theme parks. How much does that move the needle in terms of the cost base and the revenue base here as well?
Very significantly. I think the reality is if the indefinite future holds that they're going to, these kinds of attractions are going to have to operate at 30 or 50% of capacity, that represents an existential threat to a lot of them. I mean, these are huge investments, and even as such, with high attendance, they take years and years to pay off. And so I think everybody is very anxious to see not only how a park like Shanghai Disney manages its reopening here in a very controlled environment, but I think they're also going to be very anxious to see over the medium term how those capacity limits are raised, and maybe more importantly, how quickly the visitors are going to come back to fill up that higher capacity.
Well, given what you just said, what about some of the proposed theme parks, not just in this part of the world, but elsewhere? How many do you think perhaps may fall by the wayside because of that equation we've just been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be pretty optimistic. I've been here in Asia for 10 years since our company worked on the Shanghai Expo in 2010. And the reality is, quite honestly, that there have been a number of projects across the region, across the globe, frankly, that maybe weren't the best intentioned, weren't grounded in the most solid business cases, weren't really committed to the development of a high-quality attraction for its own sake, but maybe as a means to some other end. I think you'll see a continued weeding out of developers who are going at this with less than serious commitment to the quality attraction. For those that remain committed to quality attractions, I'm actually very optimistic. I mean, I think one thing that jumps out at me, has jumped out at me the last few months is I can't recall in my entire lifetime, frankly, a global news story that touched literally every one of us, including those not even following the news, in a way that the coronavirus story has. And I think one thing we've seen in literally every corner of the world is a renewed appreciation for family and friends and community. And theme parks have always played a really special and unique role in that. It's not just a slogan when Disney says magical memories to last a lifetime. They make those. And I think coming out of the coronavirus around the world, you're going to see more people out there anxious to make those kinds of memories. And so I'm pretty optimistic that as things begin to get a little more comfortable for people out there, that demand will come back. And for the serious-minded projects that are under development, I think those will continue, and we'll see success once they're completed.
Ron, what kind of permanent changes do you expect to see in the way the industry operates as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, that's really kind of the hardest question to answer, because I don't think any of us really quite knows what a post-coronavirus world looks like. Is it one in which a vaccine is out there, it's easy, it's cheap, and fully effective, and the virus is relegated to an afterthought in our day-to-day lives? Or at the other extreme, is the post-coronavirus world one that looks like the seasonal flu, where it comes back with a little bit different strain, and we all got to be cognizant of it every year. But I do think, regardless of what that world looks like, there are going to be some changes that you're going to see. Some of them in the near term are these operational changes that I think you're going to see persist. The reality is coronavirus is not exactly the first occasion in which a mass attendance attraction has had to contend with infectious agents. There have been minor outbreaks of various things at parks or concerts or sporting events in the past, and I think that this has really heightened our sensitivity to that, and so I think some of the hygiene-related changes that you're going to see in the immediate reopenings are likely to persist. But more long-term, I think you're also going to see some changes in how parks are designed, and even in some cases the materials used to build them. I think in the case of designing, you're going to see different thinking around what represents appropriate capacities for a given facility.